the regular meeting of the Carrabelle City Commission. It's Thursday, August 1st, 2019 at 6 p.m. We're at Carrabelle City Hall. I'll ask Commissioner Allen to please say the prayer, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, so all please stand.
Father in heaven, we express our gratitude for this wonderful city you've given us and this wonderful nation that's been preserved for us. We ask you tonight to be with us in our judgment and wisdom, and we might do that which is most proper and best for all concerned. We're also thankful for those that have shown up tonight in the interest of what we're doing. We hope that we can accomplish much good in our time tonight. We ask all this in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Righty. We're going to move on forward now to the consent agenda that has the July 11, 2019 regular meeting minutes and the attorney's invoices for the month of June. May we entertain a motion for that?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second? Does anyone have a second?
I'll say second.
Okay, and that's a motion by Commissioner Millender, a second by Commissioner Mathis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. All right, then we're going to move on forward now to public comment. Public comment. Okay. All right, Mr. Magnan.
Thank you. Right here? Okay, thanks. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I wanted to follow up on an issue that came up in last month's meeting here, which was animal control. And I first want to say, you know, I'm a full-time resident of Carrabelle. I've been for 2.5 years. I've been a property owner here since about 2005 and a taxpayer. I'm also an animal lover, and what attracted me to Carrabelle when I first moved here was the animals. I mean, that was one of the things, besides the water and the river and the Gulf. I loved the animals in the area, both the wild animals and the domestic animals. My wife and I have had dogs and cats ever since we were married, and even before that. Our last dog, Muggsy, Pug, just died about 6 months before we moved here. Before that, I had a beautiful yellow lab, and before that, I had a Shepherd Black Lab mix, Roxanne, who was just a wonderful dog, who grew up with my kids, and, well, my daughter loved Roxanne so much that at age 5 she married him, or married her, you know, so we had a rather elaborate wedding for Josie and Roxanne, just followed by a reception, by the way. But any dog, any father who lets his daughter marry a dog, I think is an animal lover. And fortunately, she's now 35 and has married a human person and has given us 2 wonderful grandchildren. But when this subject came up at the meeting last month, and I heard the story that George told, I was very moved by his sense of sadness over what had happened, and also a sense of urgency to try to solve some of the problems that are caused by animals that are not being supervised, that are not being cared for. You know, I brought up the topic of chickens, and I like chickens. You know, I mean, even when they're alive and walking around, I like chickens. You know? But you know, we've had an aggressive rooster in our neighborhood who has bothered any of his grandchildren, has scratched one of them, and they also leave poop all over my driveway. Now, I don't think I should have to clean up somebody else's chicken poop. I just don't. And the way that I usually find poop is with the bottom of my shoe. And so I think that some action, or at least some thought, should be given to those issues. And I know that I'm not a Facebook person, but I understand there's been a lot of comments on Facebook about it, and maybe even the paper, when the article appeared. And one that really stood out to me was that there are also raccoons around, you know, and that if there are dogs out there or cats that are not being vaccinated, rabies is a real concern, and should be a concern for everybody in the city, and people with children, and for vulnerable people. I reviewed Ordinance 199, and it covers many of these issues, you know. And while I think it does need some updating, I think that we have to move towards some kind of enforcement for animal control and some clarification of how to solve individual issues when they crop up. I know I've contacted animal control about chicken poop on my driveway and about the aggressive nature of this rooster, and I really haven't got any results. But I don't know who else to go to. I don't know who to report it to. And I understand that there's a lack of resources to take care of issues like this. So what I'm going to suggest and urge the commissioners to do is to take up this topic sometime this year, maybe later on this year. I know you are all very busy with the budget coming up. And perhaps even put that in your considerations when you're adopting a new budget, is some funding for some animal control measures that may be useful for the people of this community. I think people who live here, generally speaking, love animals, but I should not be responsible for somebody else's animal. When I was a pet owner, I took care of my own pet. You know, I took care of my pets, and I didn't expect other people to clean up my pet's poop. I cleaned it up myself. And I think that rabies issue is a serious issue, and I think it's all part of the problem. So I'm just urging you at some point to open this up to the public, maybe in a workshop forum, and I'd be glad to participate and look at that ordinance and see what changes need to be made. But I think it starts with you, with this commission, to tackle that problem. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
I have communicated with Mr. Magnan on this some via email when he wrote to me and followed up and from last month's meeting, saying that, you know, saying these issues, and as I remember Ms. Keisha spoke up, that the ordinance could use the penalties could be increased on it from $10. And, you know, I'm trying to review and think, when can we, if we want to have a workshop, we're busy the next couple of months with our budget workshops and meetings and such, but possibly in October, if we postpone it much later, then we're getting into the holidays where people are taking a week off at a time in November and a week off in December, so it's hard to work around workshops during the holidays. I have thought about it, and there are a lot of questions that need to be answered on this topic, and I've actually communicated with Mr. Adlerstein. We were talking about something else, and then he let me know that at the county workshops last week, that they have heard that both cities are wanting a increased patrol and impounding and that type of thing, and they pretty much talked about that if the cities want that, then the cities are going to have to pay to hire a full-time or part-time person, whatever's needed. It sounds like they might be able to supply the vehicle and the facility and that type of thing, but you know, if we're going to get into it, we're going to have to get some questions answered from the county coordinator, and from Mr. Fonda Davis, the supervisor of animal control, and just see what they have in mind. And we could bring all of that to a workshop. And as Mr. Magnan said, that we should keep this in mind on our wish list when we're working on our budget. You know, if folks are going to want the Ordinance 199 enforced more strictly. And that's what I see on the Facebook comments and the comments from the newspaper posted on website, that you know, they basically say that it's not enforced, but we have 2 enforcement officers from animal control for the entire county, so that's a big job. And I understand one person now is in the hospital from animal control and may not be back at work for quite some time. So would you all like to consider a workshop in October?
Yes.
Is it too far out to?
It'd be fine for me, and I've had this problem before with other people that have come to meetings. Specifically chickens have been jumping over the fence into their yard. And don't know what I can do about it. I said, I don't know.
I know it.
I have no idea.
Cook 'em up. But,
Yeah, well, that's why, I gave them that idea, you know, I said, do you like chicken?
our ordinance 199 really doesn't address farm animals per se, and maybe that's something else we could, you know.
Well, I think there's more to it than just the poultry, which was brought to us last month by George Walden. That was a dog issue, and just like you said, I've heard comments, and I know the rest of the commissioners have, about not all dogs, not all cats, and not all chickens, but there's some that are somewhat of a nuisance, and yeah, I think it's worth us looking at without getting into it right now.
Well, do we want to try to schedule a workshop in October now, or do you want to wait until September to do that?
I want to get us through what we have scheduled.
Okay, we'll we'll put that on the agenda then during Courtney's report or the clerk to schedule a workshop in October at next month's meeting.
I'd like to suggest also you could send it to P&Z so you could have something more to work with for your workshop or meeting. They can make a bunch of suggestions and you could, recommendations, and you could base your decisions on those.
Okay.
If you wanted to, because I think obviously the focus being the dollar amounts.
All right.
The severity of the fines would be the big.
And adding additional animals other than dogs and cats.
Ma'am,
Possibly. Yes, sir.
the current ordinance 199 does refer to dogs, cats, and animals, domestic animals, which chickens are under that category of domestic animals. So there is some provisions in that ordinance that do talk, but they don't call them farm animals, they call them domestic animals. But it's very sketchy, you know. And, so the ordinance is a good ordinance, but it needs some work.
Just a little updating, as you
Yeah.
said. So, do we want to send this to the P&Z for their August meeting? Or maybe their September meeting? They've got
They've got a pretty full plate August.
Okay, so in September, we'll schedule a workshop and then refer to P&Z for their September meeting. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, and then Ms. Courtney can, meanwhile, she's got a couple of months to kind of see what they're thinking on the county side. Okay. Well, we want to know that for our budget, too. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay, Ms. Cher, and just tell me your name.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cher, and I am the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And we have talked a little bit with Ms. Brenda, the city, and everything like that. And my board of directors have met, and we have decided that to help out Carrabelle Cares and Mr. Allen, that we will take over being the steering committee for the Riverfront Festival. Next year, is our 30th annual year. And at this particular time, the applications need to be in, to get marketing dollars and everything like that. So it was something that needed to be done right away. And at this particular time, I'm here just to let you know that the Chamber, in partnership with the city, because they helped out tremendously this past year. Ms. Miranda did a great job, with taking care of marketing dollars and everything like that, but so that we could get the application in for the next year. And I am here to ask anybody who would like to be a chairperson to help us out with this going forward. And we always need people to work committees, because, it can't be a one-man show. And pretty much, I think lately it had kind of digressed to that, and that's not possible. We're a beautiful, beautiful community. We have so much to offer, and the Riverfront Festival is a huge part of our community. Going forward, one of the suggestions that has been made to me, and I would like some feedback on this from the community, is that possibly we also incorporate a fundraiser. And what we were thinking, our fire departments, both here in Carrabelle, Lanark, Alligator Point, whenever there's a fire, everybody is there. They come immediately to help us. So we thought that possibly going forward, that's something that we might be able to incorporate, not only have the festival, but also have it as a fundraiser to help out some members in our community. So, thank you very much.
Okay, we thank you, and thank your board of directors for taking on this project. I know it's a big project. We thank you. Did you all have any other comments for Ms. Cher? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the commissioner's report. We have Commissioner Allen.
I have nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Mathis.
I have nothing.
All right, Commissioner Walden.
I have nothing.
All right, and Commissioner Millender.
I'll pass.
All right, well, I have one, but it's short this time, believe it or not. I just want to let you know that I followed up with Sheriff Smith regarding temporary assistance with mowing the city parks every 2 weeks, and Sheriff Smith, he immediately offered up his county inmate crews to help out on a scheduled every 2-week basis until the DOC work crew is returned. I gave the sheriff a list of priorities of locations developed by Courtney and Dustin, and that included Sands and Tilly Miller Parks and Senior Center and Isle of Rest. And these are fairly easy mowing assignments, so it helped with the negotiations with the sheriff. And I hope this schedule can be coordinated and adhered to by the Streets and Roads Department. So we don't want the sheriff's work crews and their deputy to come over to help out and find that the simple jobs that we negotiated had already been completed. So the sheriff's deputy is coordinating with Dustin whenever he mobilizes. And then as well, going forward, I'm going to request that any commission member, including myself, who sits on a board of directors that may have a conflict of interest with the city agenda item, that commissioner member please reveal that affiliation with that board of directors, and this will allow the attorney to provide an opinion on whether or not there is a conflict of interest with the affiliation. It's unfortunate that we didn't know, Commissioner Allen did not reveal his position on the Franklin County Community Development and Land Trust Board of Directors in preparation for last month's meeting. And if you'll remember, the Community Development and Land Trust had a request for special exception before this commission last month. And as well, they came back in September of 2017 for a special exception. And then moving forward, you all probably know, but the Keogh's Landing roadway and stormwater improvements project constructed by Dixie Paving is complete. In my opinion, they did a great job. It went very smooth. They worked with all of the residents out there and with Kyle and Russell and Courtney. And if you all haven't seen the finished product, please take a drive out there and have a look. All of the residents are very happy about it. So,
Looks good.
and that's it for me. Okay, and then we'll move to the city attorney's report.
Just a couple of items. The one-page memorandum of agreement relative to the St. Joe feasibility, utilities feasibility summer camp project with the Inovia task order attached has been sent to Mr. Curtis for his review, their approval, and then once that comes back, we'll sign off on it, and once they've signed off on it, we'll sign it, and then we can proceed. We'll authorize Inovia to do the work, and the way the agreement lays it out is as we pay Inovia, we submit proof of payment along with the invoice to St. Joe, and within 30 days they have to reimburse us for all costs associated with that task order, which is estimated to be $25,000. We have an interesting proposal, and I would say proposal even, but it's a group, the McDowell Housing, and they are currently working on the project there at Jordan's Bayou, where they're doing affordable housing out there, and they've expressed interest and actually produced a narrative that you all have copies of, proposing a similar, or basically similar affordable housing for the old City Hall site. And a couple of things will be on deck for the city to do in order to move that forward, even as a concept. I mean, it's certainly not approved or anything, because what they do is they seek funding from the Florida Housing Authority, and what they're seeking in this one, and they believe that it has a high probability of success of receiving funding, but they can't guarantee it. But that they would do 30 units of residential housing on the old City Hall site. They would be seeking $5 million in funding to do it. The old City Hall site is just under 10 acres, and in order to kind of move that forward, they need from the city basically confirmation that the site, it's allowable, that use, 30 residential homes. And in order to basically sign off on that approval, the city needs to do a couple of things. The first would be to an ordinance amending the table of we have a table attached to the zoning LDR, and in it, for the zoning category that the 10 acres sits in, it has 2 footnotes that could be interpreted to restrict the number of residential homes on the site. And the proposal is to bring an ordinance first to P&Z, but then it would come before the city for first and second reading to remove those footnotes, because otherwise it allows residential by special exception. Second would be to begin processing a special exception through, again, P&Z and the city to allow residential use on that property. And then third, to get basically conceptual site plan approval or preliminary site plan approval for the site plan that they've laid out in their narrative. That's, again, preliminary and conceptual, but it would, again, push it forward. Their date that they have to submit for the funding is October 6th, either 5 or 6, 9. And so our, kind of to get this stuff completed, is our first meeting there in October, which occurs on the 5th. I'll double check. But we're just before that submittal. So one thing I would ask, obviously at the pleasure of the commission, is to have the P&Z folks to direct these 3 issues of ordinance amendment, site plan approval, and special exception to P&Z at their August 15 meeting.
Let me ask the commissioners if they had an opportunity to review the proposal. I asked staff to make sure that each one of y'all got a proposal emailed to you and then a hard copy, and I hope y'all had time to look at it.
I did.
Okay. And I'm
But that's just a preliminary proposal.
that's correct.
Correct.
And Mr. Shear comes from Christopher Shear, and I've reported to you all the month since he's been here to see us about Jordan Bayou. I've communicated with him, and he will be coming, if it's favorable tonight, he will come on September the 5th for a presentation to discuss formally. Right now, he's in Austin, Texas. It was already scheduled. So, go ahead.
Just ask you, if he'd come here in September to make a formal presentation to this board, but it's going to P&Z on the 15th, that may be imperative that there's some information for P&Z to be considering there from them as well.
P&Z will have the narrative, so P&Z will have the complete narrative that they provided. And let me also make one more point, is we have ordered an appraisal, and we talked about this at the last meeting, so we've ordered an appraisal, we don't have the results back yet. The appraisal will give a value of the property as it sits with the improvements on it, and then a value as basically raw land, just to give us a full range of understanding as far as value of that property. In the narrative, it talks about, because they are concerned about, for instance, asbestos abatement, and they wouldn't be using any of the existing improvements, they would have to demo everything on that site. And they've noted that there's likely asbestos, which is possibly true. And that is what they're saying in the narrative, so we haven't begun real negotiations or anything, but that they would potentially budget up to $100,000 for the property. And we really don't have a frame of reference until we get our appraisal back to do any negotiating. But we're kind of, obviously, there's a time crunch from a, call it legal recommendation standpoint. The ordinance removing the footnotes, the city would want to do that regardless, because that's just going to put that property in a better position to be sold, to be used for the benefit of the city of Carrabelle. So that's just something that is housekeeping. That's a good idea anyway. The conceptual site plan and the special exception approval, if we cannot reach an agreement on a sale price, those are irrelevant. Meaning, even if we grant them, a contract buyer a lot of times will ask for those before they close on a piece of property, but it will incentivize them to be negotiable. But if we can't reach terms on a sale of the property, then we're not harmed by even if we grant those approvals.
And so on September the 5th, we would have a report of recommendations from the P&Z, and then we would have Mr. Shear would be here for discussion. And it's possible that during September we're having 2 budget hearings, and we can also have a special meeting before or after the budget hearings, either one or both, to address the ordinance issues, being that takes two hearings for a special exception. And
Sorry, the special exception will take 1, so that one's easy, and that one we can do tack on a budget hearing.
okay.
I would actually, I know we've talked a lot about this, but obviously we can get P&Z's recommendations, but the ordinance, simply deleting 2 footnotes, I will prepare, if the commission's all right with it, I will prepare that, so Keisha has it. We can do an advertisement for first reading September, second reading October.
Well,
Because that would be something we'd want to do anyway. It's not complicated, that one. That's not, P&Z may have some thoughts on it. We can consider that at first reading. We can always make a change.
now, I had a couple of questions. I read over this about 3 times, and at the first go-round, I thought I didn't have a question, but then I read again last night, so I sent questions off. And one question was, if the commission votes favorably on moving forward with McDowell Housing Partners proposal, will the city be working with McDowell Housing Partners or McDowell Properties, so that we understand who we're working with, because McDowell Housing Partner is an arm of McDowell Properties. And Mr. Shear wrote back that we would be working with McDowell Housing Partners, but he said Partners LLC. that the owner, developer of the project will be a single-purpose legal entity of which McDowell Housing Partners LLC is the managing member. And then I asked, will any of the financing products or methods such as listed in the proposal, like they're talking about CDBGs that they might use, or FHA mortgages, I said, will any of these financing methods or any other type of methods will that provide an avenue for a reduction in or an exemption in their ad valorem tax liabilities? And he said no. Once the property is transferred to the new for-profit LLC, it will be subject to ad valorem. The only way to secure tax zero exemption is by meeting the state statute, which requires 100% ownership by a 501c3 not-for-profit. It has to be affordable and restricted to the elderly demographic. So he says we expect the property will be placed on the tax rolls, because we just want to make sure during negotiations that we can have in the back of our minds that we would be looking forward to tax revenues for the city and the school board and the county. So that's all I have to say, unless you all want to review this proposal.
I'll make a motion that we continue the process already set forth with McDowell LLC.
I second it.
Okay. Will that, we have a motion by Commissioner Millender and a second by Commissioner Walden. Okay, discussion. Is that motion sufficient to send to P&Z, or do we need another motion to send to P&Z?
I think that's sufficient.
When I termed it to continue the process, should it include all of what we've just been discussing?
Okay. All right. And we have that motion by Commissioner Millender, second by Commissioner Walden. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then that motion carries. Okay, and just on this topic, I want to mention then that there's a possibility that the old City Hall site could sell. It's a possibility. We're just talking about it. But we need to make arrangements to secure all those old records that are in that area there in that classroom adjacent to the old police department. We've got Christmas decorations. I think the Carrabelle Police Department has some items in the Bay area. We need to decide what furnishings want to be kept. Maybe we need to send a final notification to all the agencies that still continue to use the building for storage. And we need to be thinking about where we're going to store those old records and Christmas decorations. Anything else, Ms. Courtney? Any furniture? There's some furniture items you wanted to keep, not much. A couple of tables.
Maybe just maybe for our nonprofits and stuff. I don't think there's anything anymore.
But they'll, I know Ms. Tamlin wants a picture out of there, out of the auditorium, but the nonprofits need to be notified that they're going to have a place to secure their items.
Just a quick question, Mayor, ask for Courtney, did the Nest ever contact you about getting some of the school furniture out of there for their use over at the Nest?
No.
They had contacted me a couple times and I sent them to you. Anyway, they were interested in some of those desks over there, and I thought that was a worthy thing to let the Nest, those kids, have some of those desks. That'd just be more items out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mean to take home?
No, to take to the Nest,
Oh,
to
yeah.
use at the
I
Nest.
believe the sheriff's department had wanted some desks for some classrooms. I think they contacted Keisha about maybe a GED class that they do at the sheriff's department. They were looking for some desks. So I do not have an issue with them, the sheriff's department, the Nest getting some of it.
Exactly.
Emergency management, whoever needs it, you know. And we may have to think about something like a building like they did out at the sewer treatment plant out there. You know, something like that, maybe a little larger. What size was that?
That was 20 by 16.
With a concrete floor.
Yeah.
Mhm. So it might need to be something a little larger, something like that. You know, we do have the old water plant site on Avenue C, but, you know, I'm just putting this in your mind so we can start thinking and
That's
thinking
good.
out of the box. We got to. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions on this item for now? Okay. Then we'll move on to the city administrator's report.
Was Dan
Excuse
done?
me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danny.
All right, last month we voted to submit a grant for the hurricane loss mitigation program, so that was submitted this month. I have not heard back on that grant. Carl and Charlie are coordinating the generator installation for the firehouse, the soundproofing for the 4 police department offices, the police department lobby, the main lobby, and the administrator's office has been completed. And we can see a big difference, so I think that did some good. Kimley Horn is preparing the formal Triumph application for the airport project. We received our approved commencement package for Tilly Miller Park, so we're going to be starting our rehab of Tilly Miller Park here shortly. On July 17th, the DEP awarded $74,500 for a grant to develop a land management plan for McKissick Beach. And Josh Adams with the ARPC, he's the regional planner, and he will be overseeing the DEP grant process and manage all the deliverables for the development of the plan. Mr. Tom Taylor, he's the facilitator from FSU FCRC Consensus Center, and he'll be the impartial third party and will conduct all the workshops that will start in January. And on your desk you have, and the mayor's going to touch a little bit more on this, but you'll see a process of what's going to be happening with the McKissick Beach plan and what meetings are going to happen and who's going to facilitate it. And so y'all have a list here.
Anything else?
Yeah, I had a few more. I
Okay.
didn't know if you wanted to add to that.
Well, I will, I'll go ahead and do that now. And I wanted to thank Courtney too for working with Richard Fetchek and Mr. Josh Adams, both of the ARPC, and getting all the documents together to submit for that application. Earlier this year she did that. I wanted to say that I did, because there's a possibility this is going to be a controversial issue, developing a land management plan for McKissick Beach. I called Mr. Josh Adams, and so I prepared this for anyone who wants to look at it. I've sent it out to Leslie Cox and a couple of other people. But this is the way he explained the procedure will be. I took the notes, for us so we can refer to it and understand it. Eventually, I don't know when exactly, because the workshops won't start until January, but we'll appoint one member from this board to participate on the advisory committee. But otherwise, they're trying to take the politics out of it. They're going to have first stakeholders comments, one-on-one confidential comments, and then they'll have public workshops, like Courtney said, conducted by a third party. And actually, in that grant, $75,000, $24,500 was added on to it to pay for this facilitator, this impartial third party. And then otherwise, this board's required participation will be to approve or disapprove the final plan. Once it's developed, sent to the DEP, they'll make comments and send it back. And then we'll approve it or disapprove it. And at that point, we can refer back to the stakeholders' comments and the comments made at the public workshops and the recommendations from the advisory board. And I have listed the people right now that they're considering for the advisory board, but they want only one person from this board. And that's it for me on that. Thank you.
During the month, I had a call from Pat Bragdon who said, "Don't order my sign yet." She said the wording was great, and she really liked the wording, but she's been thinking about it, and instead of putting it out in the line somewhere, she'd like it put above the door. So I told her I would bring that to the commission and see what you guys thought about it.
Well, I will say that the school board members back in 2008 or 7 gave that building to the city for free or for $10, something like that.
$10, what was in that contract?
And their name was not on the building. Their name was put on a nice memorial right there at the front door. We've all seen it, it's still there. We need to capture that and save that. Had we not had this location, we probably would have ended up building some building that's similar to this on the Tamara Allen Park. It would have, area would have fit there. Ms. Bragdon was most gracious in helping us to be able to afford this location and reducing the value of the property in half. It would be nice to have a nice monument near the front door on the grounds as you come in. And this building is, the actual construction of the building is about $1 million building. Site work was about 185. And I can guarantee you the taxpayers are funding the building and most of the site work. And really, I think the building, my opinion is that the building needs to be dedicated to the citizens of Carrabelle who are paying for this building. That's just my opinion. Now,
Well, I think we had already discussed putting it out there and voted on it, so if everyone still feels that way, then we'll continue on with our plans that we have already had. All right, last but not least, Russell and I had a conference call with Christina Kroger with the Water Management District this week, and they're pushing us to move forward with our septic to sewer grant at Lighthouse Estates. She's recommending that we apply for a DEP grant/loan for the planning portion, but I'm gonna let Russell go over that further in his report, because he has it broke down with some figures from DEP and some figures from USDA and which one that we think is better. So I'll leave that, he'll bring that up under his report. And that's all I have.
do y'all have questions for Ms. Courtney?
Thank you for your work.
And then I also wanted to thank Courtney for working with Betty Webb on assembling the hurricane mitigation loss application. Courtney did, and probably Keisha helped too, some narratives on some projects. They had to submit construction project narratives. So I appreciate your work on that. It had to be done pronto.
It was.
And that grant has not yet awarded. It's just
No,
submitted.
I haven't been notified.
Okay, all right. Then I have a question, because there's been some time clock issues that some of the employees aren't able to work their fingerprint on it or something. And Miranda showed me today, while I was waiting for you to come in, she showed me the facial recognition and all of that. And it can do facial recognition and fingerprint, either or, whatever. But I think we need to address this. We went to a lot of expense and to put a new time clock system in and make sure there's time clocks at every location, each department, and we continue with folks not checking in or being able to check in or something and writing their time down. And I just think we should go ahead, and if an employee finds that he or she can't check in, and they need to come to City Hall and check in or check out. And go ahead, sir.
I was waiting for you to finish. I think in just my opinion, been there, had some experience in the past myself with this. it's a, maybe a learning issue or a disciplinary issue. Disciplinary meaning the person not taking action against the employee. But in my experience, you could manipulate those time clocks and they won't work. But if you do those fingerprint or facial recognitions as they are designed to accept, then they'll accept your fingerprint or your facial recognition. Now, I feel like that if we have employees that are having difficulty, that they should be trained and make sure that they're disciplined enough to follow the training to make the clock work like it's supposed to, and not have to come to City Hall and report. That's just additional
Well,
steps.
it is, it's terrible.
That's just additional, that almost wipes out the purpose of having
I agree.
That's just my opinion.
Well, we may need to change the finger. Sometimes you may have a cut or something.
Right.
But they can do it, you know, Miranda showed me, you can
Yes,
put,
it is.
you can do any finger.
That's
Put
just
all
my
of it.
experience.
But if you put the finger in on the side, it won't take it right. It's got to be laid just the way that you key that finger in there in the first place.
Correct.
So, do we want to have anyone that's having problems, have training? I mean, who's gonna train them? And I just don't understand.
Well,
Let me ask
I
this
don't think
It's so
it would take
complicated.
long. I don't think it would take long, 10 or 15 minutes, and they would come in and we would sit down at the time clock and have
Now, that's what I would suggest we do, is train whoever's having difficulty, train them, and get the
to. It
process
shouldn't even
working
be
the way
in
it
10
should be.
minutes probably at the time.
Because
We've
the
seen
facial
the time clock.
recognition's pretty good. I mean, you walk past it sometimes and it'll clock you.
Uh-huh.
You know, you gotta.
Look the other way? Okay, well then, if the employees, if there's multiple, please have these people come in and give them some detailed instructions, and let's practice on it. You've got one here that you can practice on, and then if we need to go out to the site, to the time clock that's at the site, then maybe we would go over there and practice on it there too.
Whatever it takes to make it work.
And then if it doesn't work, maybe we need to contact the time clock company, the software company. Maybe there's a problem with that. So, any other items for Ms. Courtney? Okay, then we'll move on to Ms. Keisha, City Clerk report.
I just wanted to say too, I remembered the Carrabelle High School had a time vault in the ground at City Hall property for 2042. So we need to consider either moving it to the Franklin County School, or I don't know who's going to be in charge of that now, because it was a Carrabelle High School thing.
Since you brought it up.
I'll just bury it out here.
Well, I think that's something that we need to pass on to the school.
School.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because it's, I remember it being done, and it just, I thought about that.
Maybe you go ahead and
I'll
call.
contact somebody about it, and if they don't want to move forward with it, I guess we can decide.
I would think they would want it out there.
Yeah, I would too.
Okay.
You asked me to reach out to my fellow clerks and about the HR firms. I got 11 total responses. 4 of them use Allen, Norton, and Blue out of Tallahassee. 3 of them, or all 4 of them, had pretty good reviews. One of them said that they had used them in the past, but his meter spins per call, per question. So it might be something we want to consider on retainer, but I believe that was in our, we had 4 other different companies that were used by 4 different ones. The smaller towns similar to us, St. Joe, Appalach J, they don't use any. So So that's my responses there, and I have them if y'all want copies. But the big one that come up was the Allen, Norton, and Blue. And then City of Mary Esther said they used the Prisoner Group, and they're on a retainer. And then we had Buck Consultants, Evergreen Solutions, and Mark Funfetti, but he's strictly labor law.
Do we want to, and so Mark, this last Mark was strictly labor law. And the others would help with some of the.
I think a lot of them, even the Allen, Norton, and Blue is labor law negotiations.
I was wondering, would we want to just send out requests for proposals to all 4 of them and see what they say?
so.
All 5
Yes,
of
I
them?
would think
I
so.
Oh, you had 5?
Well, we had 4 and then 4 with the Allen Blue.
Okay,
And we're not gonna know until we see what we get back.
yeah, that's right.
And I would just send them to all of them.
We'll just send them to all of those soliciting those companies.
Does someone want to make a motion for
I
that?
make a motion, we continue on.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Okay, so we have that motion by Commissioner Walden to continue on.
That was Millender.
That's right, and a second by Commissioner Walden. Motion by Commissioner Millender, second by Commissioner Walden, to continue with the process and mail out requests for proposals to these listed HR firms. And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries.
I forwarded you all the email from the Florida Municipal League of Cities Insurance Trust Company. It's an employment law advisor. It's a phone number you can call for specific information for free, but I've reached out to them. They won't come here, have a conference and question and answers. It's on an individual basis, but it could save a lot of time and money if we have something specific arise. And I believe since Carrabelle is a member, that the commission should be able to call.
Actually, I have called that.
Okay.
We've used it
We've
once
used
or
it in
twice
the past, right.
before, and they were good. It wasn't great, it wasn't poor, it was fine. They bounced it all around the country. It was a little tricky.
You call and you speak directly to an HR attorney or a staff.
Yeah, sort of. It's a little, which is fine, it's a little casual in a way.
Mhm.
They fire back emails, they circulate it. I think I got emails back from somebody in California on this and that. It was fine. It was good. I mean, really good as far as not costing us anything.
And it says hiring, discipline, promotion, demotion, transfer, reassignment, layoffs, termination, discrimination, harassment, unfair treatment, and retaliation.
Primarily federal issues.
I think that's a good tool to have.
Yeah, real good to have in our
Just in
back pocket.
case.
Also, they do a lot of free webinars, and I'll try and keep sending those blasts out so you can stay informed on that.
But it seems like it's a very good reference, free reference for staff and
That's
for
what I mean.
attorneys.
Yeah, it's a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, so it's
Okay.
we've got a lot of meetings coming up. Get your pens out. We have, we need to set up some budget workshops and then budget hearings. We had, at the CRA, we discussed a budget workshop and an expansion workshop. I believe that was at 10:30 and 1:30?
Yeah.
Yep, 10:30 and 1:30.
And that's on the 13th.
August the 13th.
Correct.
That is a Tuesday. Then that Thursday, August the 15th, we'll have the P&Z on what we voted on earlier. That's at 2 o'clock. The following Thursday, we're requesting a budget workshop to review the budget,
22nd?
the 22nd. And do y'all want to do that during the day?
We've done them at 5 before, so the folks don't get
Yeah,
confused with the
keep
hearing.
them at the same time, 5:01.
Fine.
Everybody good with that day there, the 22nd? And we'd like to just tentatively schedule one for the 29th, which is, you know, it would be, let's see, a week after that, in case we need it. We may not need it, we may get everything done all at once. I got it right here. It just blinked out, but the following Thursday, the 29th at 5:01. We can decide if we need to cancel that or not, but for tentatively. Then September 5th, we're moving on to September, we'll have a commission meeting. Our trim notices will go out with our first tentative hearing, and that will be September 11th at 5:01. And I know I try not to do them on Wednesdays, but that was the best day that worked, so I've got some time to schedule that. And then we have to go by the calendar, I have to run an ad, and we have to keep it 2 to 3, so that would put us having our final budget here on September 23rd, Monday. And then we'll be done, that would be our final budget, and we'd start in October. We've got the commission meeting and then possibly animal control workshop. Yeah. So did everybody get those dates?
That's good, thank you.
Thank you, Keisha.
I think that's all for me.
Okay. Do you all have any questions for Keisha? Okay, all right then, thank you very much. And we'll move forward to Mr. Russell Large and Novia.
All right, thank you. To update you on our projects, on our new DOT scope project at the Hill. Courtney executed the city's portion of that agreement and sent that back to the department, so we're waiting for the department to execute that. On the Lanark East lift station, we provided plans to Charlie, and he's managing the work on that project. CDBG grant for Avenue B. Continuing to work through punch list items. I did note that there are some items that have been completed, such as the signs have been installed. We did receive the as-built survey. And we did advise the contractor of the location to deliver the milled asphalt material, although they haven't scheduled that delivery. But as soon as we know when that delivery is being made, we'll notify Courtney. I did want to take a minute to talk about the Lighthouse project. First, I'll address the sewer portion of that project. Right now, as you know, Phase 1 has been extended. The dates have been extended to match up with the Phase 2 portion. The Phase 2 agreement has not yet been executed by the Water Management District. So from our phone call that Courtney and I had earlier this week, they're saying that that will be expected in more than 30 days, was the way she advised us. So we'll look forward to that agreement being executed. On the water portion, we did take Christina Koger's recommendation and looked at the state revolving fund as a funding option as compared with the rural development. I do have some figures on that for you. The state revolving fund, the planning and design portion of the funding would be a 50% grant amount, a 50% loan amount. The loan portion would be 10 years at 1.7% interest. The construction portion of that funding is pretty strong here at a 71% grant amount. That's a calculation they put together. So that's pretty close to what it will be at 71% grant amount. 29% loan amount for 30 years at 1.77%. Just in comparison, on the rural development side, they lump in the design with the construction with their funding. So that could be as high as a 75% grant. We still have some more work to do with them to nail down what that percentage is, but it could be as much as 75%. Both of these programs are pretty strong. And in terms of affordability, those annual payments would be on the magnitude of $30,000, $32,000 annual payments. If you consider the revenue from the new customers that would be added to the system, that would more than cover that debt service. We need to do a little bit more financial analysis on that. We need to consider the operation and maintenance costs, but in rough numbers, that debt service in either program would be affordable.
Russell, if we do a grant with DEP, does that pay for the tap fees, or can we still charge for tap fees?
You can still charge for the tap fees.
Is it gonna be voluntary connection?
On the water part, it would be when they have a failure of their well, they would be required to connect at that point.
They're begging for it.
On the water.
On the
they
water.
are. Now, okay, so let me just ask you what Ms. Courtney asked again, so I can get clarified.
Okay.
If we were to get a loan from the DEP or SRF loan, we would charge for the tap fees on the water when it's installed. Is that what you're saying?
You could, and that is a good question, and that I need to make sure I get a good answer for you on that. The grant may be able to fund those tap fees.
71% of the tap fees.
Right.
Okay.
So, just to summarize, what I'd like to recommend here is the state revolving fund has the 50% grant that I mentioned for planning and design. I would like to recommend that the city actually make that application. It's a request for inclusion. It's basically to put the city's name on the list for inclusion with this program. Doesn't obligate the city in any way, but that's an option to fund that part, while we also pursue funding through rural development. So by next meeting, we'll have an answer on this from DEP, from SR. We'll have an answer on this, and I think we'll have an answer on rural development by September as well. So I think we'll have those two to compare and choose what's the best option for the city at that point.
Okay.
And it also shows that we're making a step to move forward with
Yes,
this, and that's
And I talked with Ms. Koger at the ARPC meeting, and she let me know she was going to be in touch with you. She's saying her supervisors and the directors there want this project to move forward. You know, we're holding the grant money up, and they could use it somewhere else possibly if we're not going to use it. So I want to go back to the beginning. The Water Management District is extending the dates of the Phase 1 so that we can do both phases together, Phase 1 and Phase 2, 53 projects and then 110. So that can be one, all right?
Right.
Then when you're talking to rural development for a loan, grant package, are you talking to them for now all the 163 installation of water installation to 163 or to the first 53?
Right, good question. So on the sewer, Phase 1 is its own funding source. Phase 2 is its own funding source for sewer. For the water, that would be the same funding source. So essentially we would have 3 funding sources, 3 grants. sewer phase 1, sewer phase 2, water phase 1 and 2. So,
Water would be combined together
yes,
from the rural development.
yes, or SRF.
And yes, I was getting to that one next too. And so that would be one, you're applying
That's right,
for that as one project.
that's right.
Now, it's 163 new accounts, possibly, for water. And you think that those accounts would service the debt service of the 30 to 32,000 a year?
Yes,
If all looked up.
yes,
And then that will run past vacant lots, so there's an opportunity.
that
to-
doesn't count the future
Right,
connections.
there's an opportunity in the future for that.
That's right.
Okay. Would we need to have a rate study performed?
I don't think so, because if we're able to demonstrate that the debt service, it can be funded through the existing rates, then I don't think that we will have to
Because
take a step.
we don't want to, I hope that the whole commission thinks that we don't want to risk having to raise the whole system,
Right.
Something significantly to cover debt service for one
Right.
portion out here.
Right.
So we want to be careful.
Right.
I mean, if it's 10 cents, that's tolerable, but we don't want to have to raise it $10 or anything, so. I don't-
Right, understand.
Okay. So you are suggesting to move forward with that application for inclusion to the DEP for an
Yes.
SRF planning and design 50/50 grant loan package?
Yes.
Now, you're asking for that tonight, or you said you're gonna have more information on it at the next meeting?
No, I'm asking that you authorize us to submit this request for inclusion for DEP SRF.
It needs to
And
be
we'll have an
turned in by
answer.
first of the week.
We'll have an answer by the next meeting.
But that's not the loan application.
That is not the loan
It's
application.
just to get on the list.
Just to get on the list.
Right.
Put us on the list.
So if you want to do it, let Russell move forward. Let's have a motion on that since, money's going to be involved eventually, one way or the other.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Mathis for Russell Large to complete the inclusion package and submit to SRF, DEP. Okay, and we have a second by Commissioner Allen. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then that motion carries.
Will you email that to me?
I will. Thank you, that's all I have, unless there's
Okay.
other questions.
Do you all have any questions?
Do you have any idea of how many vacant lots there are out there? Probably that many more, isn't it?
Yes, about that many more, that's correct, yeah, pretty close.
But this is good. It will put our wastewater treatment plant to good work, to the work that it's built for. And Mr.
Yeah.
Christopherson?
Was that 1.72 interest rate, was that current? The Fed just dropped a quarter, is that,
Yes, that's calculated as of today.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, we want to save every penny we can. Okay, nothing else. All right, then we're going to move forward to the advisory board reports, Waterfront Partnership.
We're passing around hot off the press, 3 museum rat card for the 3 museums in Carrabelle that was paid for by the Tourist Development Council, and we're very grateful to them and to the mayor for voting for that. And, I think it's got some new pictures on it, which always makes things nice to change them up a little bit. I sent my report. I hope that you all saw it. I've learned tonight that I have a mistake in my report, in that I didn't realize you had just applied for the hurricane loss mitigation program. I thought you actually had received it. And both the McKissick land management plan and mitigation service for people in Carrabelle were items that were part of the original Waterfront Partnership Vision Plan from 27 and 28. Those are the years that we actually prepared this vision plan. And it's actually dated August 2008. It's interesting to just in retrospect that there are many other good ideas that are in here that we've never found funding for over the years. And that was the way it was written, is that these were recommendations should funding be available. And so we're lucky that we have gotten something finally came up, but it does take a lot of persistence and a lot of just trying it over and over again, but I do appreciate your efforts to do that. I wanted to let you know that remind you again that the International Coastal Cleanup is September 21st, and we invite you all to join us. And the other thing, one is with Miranda's help, we were able to complete all the paperwork for the Historic Preservation Grant for City Hall. And they told me earlier today that it was all complete, and we're happy with our documentation. So we requested funding for the full amount, and that's always a good thing. The other thing we wanted to let you know is that the Carrabelle Historic Society has started establishing a fundraising effort, which I mentioned to you earlier at a meeting. The city will need about $25,000 to match the grant to put an elevator in the Justice Building. It's going to be approximately $100,000. And there might be a way to get it narrowed down to a smaller amount, but these residential elevators that are so reasonably priced can't be used in a commercial building, and that's considered a commercial building. And plus, it'll hold up better if it's a commercial elevator. But this would be an external elevator to the building, but there's a place that's been designed for that off the back porch. You come out of the office and go to the elevator, and then go upstairs and come in the new door at the top of the stairs. So those things are there, and so we have actually 700, and thanks to our 2 donations, we've had $750 in that account towards that goal, and we're going to continue to try to sell cookies and whatever else we can do to help the city come up with the cash that it might take to get that phase of the building renovations done in the future. And hopefully, we're optimistic enough to think that we'll have raised that much money by next spring when we can apply for it. That's just our plan to do that. And we've also put a button on the first page of the Carrabelle History Museum website, so people who want to make a donation for that particularly can just do it right there, right online. It'll be really easy. They don't even have to write out a check. And then other things that people can purchase things and various activities that you can do with the PayPal button through that. So that's just to let you know that we have that accomplished since last month. And we had 155 visitors in July. And July is one of our slack months, so that's really a very good amount. I think it's getting very confusing about when is the off-season, because we get a lot of people here in January and February, which is considered the off-season. And we had 166 volunteer hours given by various citizens of Carrabelle this past month, which amounts in cash money to, in theoretic cash money, $3,000, almost $4,000, $7 short of $4,000. So it's a nice contribution that a lot of people make, working a 2-hour shift at the museum one time during the month, and we're continuing to recruit people to do that. And I would just like to say that the discussion about the time capsule that's at the old high school. In the event that the new school doesn't want it, I have no idea, but perhaps you would like to put it in the ground at the Justice Building, because you own the Justice Building, and you would have that, and it would be protected, whatever that building is being used for. We would like to believe it, those years, it'll still be the Carrabelle History Museum, but certainly the property will still belong to the city.
That's a consideration as well.
We'd be glad to have it in the front yard. It'd be very nice.
All right.
Thank you all.
Okay, do you all have questions for Ms. Tamara? Okay, and I'm just going to coattail on what you said about the land management plan, how it was in your vision back in 2008. You just have to persevere, and finally funding comes available, 11 years later for that. And this land management plan, that's just what it is. It's a plan, and we can't pursue funding from the DEP to do projects until we have a plan. And Courtney and I have been told several times by Mr. Fetchek and Mr. Adams that it's a guiding document, that nothing that will be included in that document is mandatory because the city of Carrabelle can't fund any of that. Whatever, we don't know what's going to be in it, but whatever, if it's, whatever it is, major projects, the city can't afford to fund it. So it's going to take more perseverance and time to get the projects funded. So we just have to continue to persevere.
That's why planning's so important.
All right. Thank you. And then we'll move forward to, we have no Economic Development Council report, and we have Mr. Tim Sullivan, Carrabelle Aviation Advisory Board.
Good evening. I talked to Kinley Horn after I sent the report out, and they talked about the Triumph application. The draft is complete, and they should be sent in early next week for review, for the city to review it. The master plan is at the FDOT headquarters for final approval. It's really been taking a lot of time because when we got the first draft back, they have a formula for estimating the growth of the airport, and we far exceeded it just in the last few years. So I asked them to take another look at it and to recalculate it all for this airport in particular. And they did, and they accepted it at the district level, and now it's at the headquarters level for approval. And then as soon as we get that, and they're figuring, hopefully within a couple of weeks, then they'll do the airport layout plan, which would be the final part of the master plan. And lastly, I didn't mention that the advisory board will review the airport budget early this month, so we'll have. We'll send our thoughts to the city before the 22nd. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, I do.
Oh, okay.
All right. So Kimley Horn will send that draft application for review. You know I'll be going to.
Yes, yeah,
okay.
it should be early next week.
Okay, and then I'm just going to talk about the master plan now.
Okay.
About how long have you all, the advisory board and staff and all of us, been working on that master plan?
I believe we started in January.
Of this year?
Yes.
Okay, so, and this is not the first, but it's an updated.
This is actually, there was no record of a master plan. They believe the last one was 1991. So it's a 20-year window with a 10-year update.
Okay.
But there was no record of it anywhere, so we really didn't have one. We had an airport layout plan from 2009, but it didn't really depict what we needed at the airport.
So basically now 6 months working on an airport master plan.
Yes.
6, 7 months.
Well, we worked a lot longer trying to get the funds to get to that
Yes,
point.
but when you started the actual work.
Right.
Okay, and that'll give you an idea on your McKissick Beach land management plan. You know, you're going to have 6 to 8 months in it before it's submitted. This is now submitted to the FDOT for their approval.
Right.
And so you'll have that much work in, then you'll submit it to the DEP for their approval. So, Okay, well, I
All right,
look forward
thank
to
you.
seeing that draft application.
Yes,
Triumph.
hopefully early next week.
Thank you for your report. And then next up would be the Human Resources report, but Carrabelle Human Resource Committee, and we have none, so we'll move forward unless we want to take a break. But I think that Mr. Payne would prefer that we move forward and not take a break. So, okay, all right, new business. Item 1, presentation of the 2017-2018 financial statement by Mark Payne of James Moore Company.
Afternoon. I also have Wayne Durrett with me. He's a manager on this job. Did most of the field work. I think, Brenda, you worked with Wayne in my absence. I was off for a little bit of time, but I'll be real brief. We basically, on page 1, page 2, and page 3, have our independent auditors report on the September 18 financial statements for the city. I will point out that these financial statements are the council's management's responsibility. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on your financial statements. This is a clean opinion except for one issue. There was something new this year, GASB 75. You guys elected to take the exception, which 99% of our small cities did. So you didn't have to spend a bunch of money with an actuary coming up with a number on what future dollars would be for health insurance when people retired. It's something GASB came out and they said we were supposed to record. We did not record that on these financial statements. Just want to bring it to your attention. Also, most cities aren't doing it, and you save thousands of dollars by not doing that. Okay. I will bring your attention to page 11. And basically, this is a snapshot in time, the statement of net position for the city of Carrabelle. Total assets, these are rounded numbers, $58 million. Total liabilities, about $8 million. The residual is your equity for the city, $51 million. Obviously, most of that's tied up in roads, buildings, that type of thing, which is about $48 million. The other thing I want to point out to you, if I may, is on page 13. You guys are doing a good job continually paying down the loan to the CRA from the general fund, so that's good. You guys are right on target where I think you, in fact, if you'll turn to page 15, you can see how much money you actually spent. And here again, we're predicting a loss in that CRA as you continue to spend that money down. So
We just made another payment.
Oh, did you?
in,
Oh, good, good.
$125.
Okay, good. Also on page 15, you'll notice that the general fund this year actually lost about $400,000. Well, if you think about it, see this building right here? For these presentations, we actually expensed the building on the books, so that's why you had this huge loss this year. So I just want to bring it out to your attention. But otherwise, on the other fund set of statements in that $50-something million number, we're going to depreciate this building over 39 years. So it'll be depreciating when I'm probably dead and gone. So there you go. Page 18. This kind of gives you a snapshot on your proprietary funds. The biggest thing I think I want to mention on this is, if you look, it looks like we lost $1 million. However, and I say this every year, that depreciation, which is all the pipe in the ground and all this kind of stuff, is $1.8 million. So our depreciation is 1.8. We lost $1 million. In my mind, you probably really made about $800,000. So just FYI, but that's the way we have to account for those types of things. Does that make sense to everyone? The other thing, I'm really glad you guys brought this up at the beginning of the meeting. This was probably my biggest concern for the city on page 38. If you'll turn to basically subsequent events. And I'll actually read what the note says on page 38, note number D at the bottom under subsequent events. As of June 27th, which was when these financials were printed, basically, management had not determined the outcome of the old City Hall location and the impact that the outcome would have on the financial statement. So I'm glad you guys are moving forward with trying to do something with the old City Hall. I remember when the school board gave that property to you years and years ago, and we were all excited about it, but we were not excited about the utility bill. I'll leave it at that.
And the last thing I want to mention to you, this is really a high-level look, remember, is if, you know, these findings, I think the only one I really want to just make sure you guys understand is the segregation of duties. There's really not enough people here in the city hall to do everything you'd want to do in a big town or a big city. So just, you know, always be on your P's and Q's, look at things, and if I can say one thing, always ask questions. If something doesn't make sense to you, you keep asking the question until you're fully satisfied everything's okay. So just want to point that out to you. And then right behind that, did you guys get a copy? Courtney, did they get this letter attached? Did they get the side letter?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I'll go over it with you real quick. It should have been in that box, but this is basically a letter from me to you. And basically what it says is this: the most significant estimate in these financial statements is an allowance for doubtful account, which is not a big number. The depreciation is a big estimate in these financial statements. It also says we didn't have any problem with staff. Remember, we did our audit. And it also says, to our knowledge, staff did not consult with any other CPA firm about any accounting issue. That's pretty much what that letter says. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
I'll make a copy too.
Okay, you can actually have that one. Does anybody have any questions for me? You guys are always a pleasure to work with. And I got to tell you, this now is the nicest city hall that I work on anyway. Wayne, I know you do he does a lot of government work around the state. This is a nice building, really nice.
Thank you.
Really nice, good job.
And my husband had a lot to do with it.
Good, it's very well laid out.
Designing them.
And I love the stairs, by the way. Those are neat. Have y'all seen those?
That wasn't my idea.
You gotta hold on when you're
real
going up.
stairs.
You gotta hold on when you're going up. It's really
And down.
nice. And down, that's right.
Yeah. I want to just comment on the list of corrective actions. There's 9 audit findings this year, and there were 11 last year. And, you know, since I've been on board, I've tried to whittle these down, but always one seems to crop up. But there's a base of about 6 of them that have been on since I've been here. And, you know, it's using the GAAP, the general accounting practices, and the segregation of duties, and budgetary controls, and that type thing that we just can't do, and all small cities really can't do that because of the skeleton crew. And if you'll look back then on page 52, you'll see there's a chart, and it shows you for the years past that those same 6 basic items continue to stay on the list of findings and corrective actions. We have 2 new ones still, but the Community Redevelopment Agency, that's not new. That will drop off eventually. Like I said, we paid another $125 on it. We're whittling it down. And then we have the health insurance reimbursement. The city will review its employer health care arrangement to become in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. And because we are reimbursing to some commissioners insurance reimbursement.
There's conversation right now about that going away, actually.
Right, and actually there's and you write in here that the city needs to monitor the new regulations that are coming up in 2020, and possibly this new HR firm, if we can get one,
Yeah.
can let us know how we need to sign up for that and become in compliance and get that finding dropped off there.
But here again, the segregation of duties in my mind is the biggest one. Just making sure you guys are watching and asking questions. That's really in my mind, the biggest one.
And they know I do ask questions, but I think Commissioner Millender does too. Then I wanted to also I like to bring some things out just so that the taxpayers understand where their money's going. We do have a list of operating expenses expanded out on 18 for the Water and Sewer Department. I asked where is it for the regular administrative and police department, and they don't do their financial report that way. But for 17-18, the salaries were $461,000 at the Water and Sewer Department. City-funded employee benefits were $213,474, increased $30,000 from the year before. and for their autos and trucks that they use in their work every day. It costs $22,924 for that fiscal year. And then for retirement for that fiscal year, the city's contributions to the Florida retirement system was $92,985, and to the health insurance subsidy was $13,747. And then employee contributions were $24,844 on those to the retirement system. So, I like to let folks know a little bit about where their money is going. Of course, the tax dollars are not affected on the water and sewer department. That's their water and sewer rates that pay those salaries and cost over there. So, do y'all have any questions or comments? Okay, well, we thank you very much.
Still doing that?
Still doing it. It's slower this year, but still getting there. Yep. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. May. It was a pleasure to see you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, do we want to, yes, sir.
Can I just say one thing? I misspoke when you asked me about the master plan. I went back and checked my notes. We started in January 2018, so and then we figured 12 months to get it done. It's going to be more like 20 months.
Okay.
Time goes by fast.
And when you said that, I distinctly remember sitting out there working on a chart, a conceptual sweating, and I said, was that this summer? Was it last summer? But it was last summer.
Right.
Okay, so about 22 months to get it done. And it wasn't controversial. So, all right, do we want to move forward or take a break here? Take 5 minutes, okay? We're going to have to take 5 minutes.
That means 20 for Mr. Frank.
You got 5 minutes. All right.
I just didn't leave.
All right, okay, we're going to reconvene here on August the 1st, 2019, Carrabelle City Commission meeting. We're under new business, item 2, discussion of possible action concerning hiring a wastewater treatment plant operator. And we have Mr. Charlie Painter here, and the potential new hire, Mr. Aguilar, he's not here this evening?
Nope.
Okay. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the application that was submitted? It was in Ms. Courtney's office. And then you have a recommendation, Mr. Painter?
For the employee?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, we only have the one.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, sometimes that's not a good thing.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mathis.
To hire the one
Okay.
you recommend.
All right, and then do we have a second so that we can have a discussion? Okay, a motion by Commissioner Mathis, a second by Commissioner Allen. Okay, and then discussion. And then, just for the public record, his licensing, Mr. Manuel Aguilar's licensing.
He's a wastewater C and a water operator C. He's
Oh.
dual license.
All right, and he's got quite a few years of experience.
Yeah, he actually used to work here for Carrabelle years ago through a subcontractor for the wastewater plant. He worked in Lennon at some wastewater treatment facilities, and then had moved back here and has worked for Apalachicola for several years.
He's got 20-some odd years, maybe 30 years, so quite a few years.
Right.
Okay.
Who was that second?
Commissioner Allen. Mr. Commissioner Mathis, Commissioner Allen. And then, do we have a salary that's suggested? Wage per hour.
1750 is what we were talking about.
Okay, per hour.
Yes.
And what, do we know when Mr. Aguilar is ready for work, when he can report to work?
I had told him that I would, he would either be here tonight or I would call him in the morning and he could put his 2 weeks notice in.
Okay, so he needs to give a 2-week notice. Okay, so, we have a motion and a second, and we're in discussion. And And do we want to discuss the salary range? It's suggested at 17 and to 17.50 per hour.
What you suggest?
$17.50. He's taking a $7 pay cut coming here.
He's taking a $7 pay cut an
Yes.
hour?
Yes.
I'll go along with $7.
Where's he treating us?
Apalachicola.
He's been there for quite some time.
Correct. Correct. He's gotten some raises along the years, and he wants to be closer to home. He lives in Lanark. He doesn't want to drive to Apalachicola. Carrabelle seems to be a little more stable city, somewhat, that he's mentioned, so maybe all those things put into context, that's why he's applied here.
All right, then, do we want to have a amendment to the motion for $17.50 an hour?
I'll amend that motion, $17.50 an hour.
All right, we'll just take it as the original motion. Commissioner Mathis motions to hire Manuel Aguilar at a rate of pay at $17.50 per hour. And Commissioner Allen continues to second that. The second holds, he says. So any further discussion?
Is that a salary or an hourly?
Well, that would be a salary.
Oh, it's going to be a salaried
Well, I
position.
mean, it's a limited overtime job anyway, so. I'm thinking about it, nobody else was salary there on that job. It's a time, hourly, I'm sorry, I mean.
Okay.
I just want to know what it's on.
No, you're, yeah.
Okay. But there's very little overtime, you say, involved with that?
The overtime would only be when somebody's on sick instead of coming in to cover somebody else's time.
Or takes a vacation or.
Right, or somebody's on vacation.
Okay. All right, then, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and tell Mr. Aguilera to give his 2-week notice.
Okay.
We'll be looking forward to it.
With that, it's probably not the right time, but I have another employee that's a little higher up than he is, but they're both going to be making really close to the same wage. I would like to ask the commission to give this Justin Messer a raise of like $1, $1.50 to keep him above the new guy coming in. We're running really short on her. Like this guy's taking a $7 pay cut coming in here, and Justin's already doing that job that he was doing for Apalachicola, and their wages are going to be right tight together. I don't feel it's right to have an employee coming in and have another one sitting at the same wage where he's been here for several years.
So you recommend $1 an hour pay raise?
Well, I'd like it to be $1.50. We have it in the budget for that, but if the commission decides on $1, I'm good with that. I just need a little more spread there. I don't think it's right to have an employee that's been here that long and does that kind of a job for the city to be that close to the new hire.
Well, we have already, Courtney, Charlie, and I have done a preliminary budget review to get it ready for August. The budget will handle it, the increase up to $1.50 an hour.
Make a motion to raise it to $1.50 an hour.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Mathis, second by Commissioner Walden to increase Justin Messer's rate per hour an additional $1.50.
Correct.
Okay, $1.50. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then that motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else, sir?
I don't have it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will say, Mr. Messer's been doing a fine job. I probably reported it when I went out there during the open house. He had that treatment plant looking like a showroom. And then I reported last month where you had told Courtney and I that the expenses are down, the MIAX purchases are down, and alarms are down, and the SCADA systems.
Overtime's down. The expenses are coming down the water plants. So the guy's working really hard.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, here we go. Item number 3, approve, disapprove statewide mutual aid agreement with emergency management. And we have a mutual aid agreement that needs to be signed. This actual agreement document needs to be signed, and there's a resolution that comes with it that we need to approve. And this is pretty much routine, standard
And
business.
this was emailed to us from the Emergency Management Office from Amber now, and the county has to do the same agreements, and she says so does the city of Carrabelle and the city of Backlash. So it is standard.
And this is to qualify to get FEMA reimbursement after disasters. And are you prepared to read that resolution, sir? Okay.
Resolution 09-2019, whereas the State of Florida Emergency Management Act, Chapter 252, authorizes the state and its political subdivisions to provide emergency aid and assistance in the event of a disaster or emergency, and whereas the statutes also authorize the state to coordinate the provisions of any equipment, services, or facilities owned or organized by the state or its political subdivisions for use in the affected area upon the request of the duly constituted authority of the area, and whereas this resolution authorizes the request, provision, and receipt of interjurisdictional mutual assistance in accordance with the Emergency Management Act, Chapter 252, among political subdivisions within the state, and now therefore be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Carrabelle that in order to maximize the prompt, full, and effective use of resources of all participating governments in the event of an emergency or disaster, we hereby adopt the statewide mutual aid agreement, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference.
Okay, then. They can get a copy of it. But I'm just going to request a motion to approve the resolution for the statewide mutual aid agreement and approve Courtney and Dan, and Ms. Keisha has to attest it, to sign the agreement document itself.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Approve. Second.
Okay. And so that motion is by Commissioner Millender, second by Commissioner Allen. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, then, the very last item is public hearing, and we're going to have second reading, and action is required on ordinance 473.
And just a note of a clerical change to paragraph 2, the last sentence was removed as it was in error. So, otherwise unchanged, and it's second reading.
Did you want to read any of it for us, or?
Read it by title. It's an ordinance of the City of Carrabelle, Florida, Ordinance 473, providing for the amendment of Ordinance 445 of the City Land Use Regulations, providing for findings of fact, providing for changes in the permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses within the limited residential R5 and mixed-use commercial C1 districts, providing for repeal of ordinances or part of ordinances in conflict herewith, to the extent of such conflict, and providing for severability and establishing an effective date. And this ordinance, just for a refresher, was the one that eliminated mobile homes from the C1 district and eliminated them in R5, with the exception of basically allowing folks who were in mobile homes that were destroyed by an act of God to replace their destroyed mobile home with a new mobile home.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion on this? We're going to take action. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, then I'm going to call for a motion to approve or disapprove.
I move to approve. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Commissioner Millender. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then that motion carries. And an hour and 50 minutes into it, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and second? Okay, that motion is by Commissioner Millender, second by Commissioner Walden. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you all very much.
High five.